All right, I want to give you a few minutes to meet with the people in your group. And then what we'll do today is we'll get started. We'll do all of the presentations. Take us about a little more. So I'm going to give you about like 5 minutes or so just to check in with your group, figure out who's saying what, make sure you have everything kind of organized together. Remember, you're just presenting from your desk, so you don't have to get on, you're just going to read it from where you are. But I'll give you about 5 minutes and then we'll go from there. Make sure again you have all your names on that sheet that you're turning in. But take a few minutes and then we'll go through the presentation. So, what's up? What was that? Yeah, we have a lot of people who come in tonight. All right, well, so just do what you can as a group and then not get first. We'll be there in a couple of minutes. Okay. Okay, if they're willing to let you join their group, you can. Otherwise, unfortunately, at this point, you've missed it. If you had emailed me, yeah, oh yeah, please listen. But if if they're willing to let you like contribute, that's totally fine with me. But that's kind of up to them.
He got life, but people wanted to.
You're right. Very warm.
It is, maybe you know that you are trying to get through it.
It's been chilly.
Yeah. Finally, finish the little program.
It's cold. Ready to go? I like the jackets with no.
That's
really cool.
I didn't even watch it once.
No? I was.
All right. Oh, that.
Yeah.
I know that she was, she really always. So like. Who's this? It's Gypsy Mom. Really? Did you help her knock out? She did. Stole it, right?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
You got
it from her.
I don't even think that. They don't think about that. Right? Oh, it's right there. I got that one. That one. My bad.
Have you walked up the phone? Back in the last like 40 seconds. Yeah, oh, of course, probably, there's something. So just another minute or two and then we'll get started.
Yeah, what's whatever you play with. And yeah.
Right, is everybody ready? Everyone kind of sounds ready. They're all looking at me like I'm ready. Let's do this. So we have, I believe we have 7 or 8 groups. And so all we'll do is we'll go through each room. And you can sit in your seat. Obviously, like I said, you can divide this up however you decide in the group. One person can do it, all of you can do it. The one thing I would really like to ask is for everybody to, whoever's presenting, let's give them our full attention, not talk over them in any way. It's a little intimidating to speak in front of your peers, even from your seat. So I'm just making sure we're being respectful of that. And then at the end, I'll collect all the sheets and we will move forward. But is there anyone who wants to go first? Get it out of the way. You want to go? Yeah, okay. Right, get it out of the way before that. And make sure you let us know who you have, who you're doing.
Alrighty, my name is John Wayne Gacy, the clown guy. So he was born at some point before the 1970s. He had a lot of ADHD. His dad was an alcoholic, and I guess he really abusive towards him and 2 sisters. But towards the end of it, I guess John gained some like resilience and like wouldn't react to it anymore. And then as far as like his school life, he had a congenital heart condition, so he was like ostracized a lot because he couldn't participate in a lot of things. And then on top of that, he was bisexual, and so obviously that wasn't very cool back then. So he bullied a lot on account of that. He attended college at some point, got into a variety of things. At some point, he was a fast food chain manager. During that time, I think around the time he married his first wife, he had 2 kids. He was convicted of his first assault on some 2 teen boys. He was sentenced to 10 years, but was released after the first 2 years on parole. And he was, I think within the first year after his release, he was convicted again of another assault. But for that one, he didn't really get tried because for some reason, the person didn't show up to trial. I wonder what happened there. Then he moved to some place in Chicago area, got really into he was really into politics. He was a big guy into the Democratic Party. As much as he could be. There was even a step I heard online that he like had a moment that he impersonated a police officer who like bring a little light around him and like pull up on stuff. And then I also heard that at some point he worked alongside like a mortuary person, and like he got fired because they found like the clothes next to the body, and they were like, "What happened, man?" Anyway, so after his first conviction, his wife obviously left him, never spoke to his kids again. He got married at some point again to another woman. He also, became a jolly joker clown, and that was his big, weird thing. He kind of ruined the reputation of all clowns just because he was a clown at some point. So a lot of his murders, he eventually convicted murdering 33 people, 33 men between the ages of like 15 and 21, all young men. A lot of them were men who worked under him for his construction company. And that's actually how he got apprehended for all the murders. One of the guys who, he visited a pharmacy, and some guy who worked there was trying to work for him and followed him out. And, because of that whole exchange, that was what led them to him. And then when they found his house, got to his house, searched the place, found all the evidence to all the murders, and then all the bodies he had buried under the crawl space in his house. And so once he was apprehended by the police, he confessed to all of it, but then somewhere in the mix, because I think they were trying to get him the death penalty, he tried to convince the mental health professionals that he had dissociative identity disorder. Back then it was a multiple personality disorder, but he tried to put out the fact that like he had so many different weird careers, like the contractor, the politician, the clown, like he tried to play it off that those were all different personalities. And I guess there was a point where he had a brain injury, and he tried to play it off as like, oh, there were plots that, every time there was a plot that was his brains would black out. But essentially, no one believed that, and with only 2 hours of deliberation, he was convicted guilty and was eventually executed sometime. That's all I got.
Great, yeah, and he tried to, like you were saying, tried to fake having multiple personalities,
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to do. It seems like it wouldn't be that hard to do, but it is very challenging, and there's so many checks along the way, right, that he wasn't able to do so successfully, right?
Yeah, and they, you know, of course, in doing all this research in him throughout his all the tape, because we confessed to all of it, they, you know, diagnosed him with multiple, not actual multiple personality disorders, but like different personality disorders, like one was antisocial,
Right.
like narcissistic. He can get criteria for a lot of problems, and honestly, he was a sound guy, so they couldn't necessarily figure it out, but it wasn't enough to like keep him from getting it. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to get him that facility instead of whatever jail. Yeah, so
being executed, right?
yeah.
Okay. Right. Great, and let's clap for everybody, just because it's always nice when you clap. Perfect. Thank you. So Gacy down, did I tell you that, did I tell you that a student in my other class, whose mom was at it, yeah, she brought a picture yesterday, and like, it wasn't super clear, like it was gonna blur you, I was like, oh, that's. Right, I can't even imagine, so, anyway, anyone wanna go next? Who wants to go next? Yeah, go ahead.
I chose Francine Hugh.
Mhm.
Her background information is that she's an American woman and she was born in Michigan in the 40s. She had 4 children and she was also a nurse. Crime she committed was first-degree murder for killing her abusive husband. She set fire to the bed in which her husband was sleeping and she obviously died. Legal proceedings and verdicts. She was found not guilty due by reason of temporary insanity. Her defense attorney used battered woman syndrome, which means like a woman or women who are victims of physical, sexual, and psychological abuse by making it difficult for them to gain control. And then she was also seen as sympathetic by the court. Yeah.
Okay, and it's interesting because we have a couple of women up here who endured some abuse, and nobody chose Andrea Yates in here, but same thing for her, right? A lot of abuse, or not, I guess not, I'm sorry, Lorena Bobbitt was the abuse, but Andrea Yates also, it's like the women were a little more, received the not guilty by reason of insanity verdict more frequently than the men have, but also their crimes tended to be less extensive, right? And not as many people that they murdered and so on. Yeah.
Yates problem that she postpartum psychosis.
Yeah, so what you see is like postpartum psychosis and then people who were abused chronically, right? And so just interesting, some kind of interesting gender differences, which isn't uncommon with serial killers anyway, that men tend to perpetrate like higher amounts of murders and be more likely to be serial killers versus maybe the more product of like mental illness. So just an interesting observation, but thank you. Let's clap for you as well. Right. Okay, we have a few more who wants to go next. Yeah, great.
August 2014, judge in September 2014, both girls found August 2006, in 2017, a case of homicide and party to Morgan tells the judge she has to put on a shooting. In September 2017, and still strong about relatively mental disease, and she's actually really set Morgan pleads guilty as charged, but not unwilling, liable, and unwilling state mental hospital, where she has been for 18 months. And he said his sentence to 25 years out of mental institute for first attempted intentional homicide. He committed to 40 years of mental health treatment in London. And he's received conditional release in 2021 and will be GPS monitored and supervised institution research. Morgan has been at a mental institute since 2018 and she's still there.
This one is such a wild case, right? And did you say how many times they stabbed her? 19, right? It's stabbed, so 19 times she lived. Otherwise, I think the verdicts would have been much more severe. But to impress a fictional character, right? Slender Man from was it Creepypasta, right? It was the website. And so the bizarre thing about this is like the both of them have really like a lot of schizophrenia symptoms, really like bizarre. And one of the more recent cases that is up here. Is there anything else you wanted to add at all before we? Okay. All right. Next, who wants to go next? Yeah, great. Go for it.
1906, and he died on July 26, 1984. His father died of alcoholism when he was a young boy, and his mother preached of the devil. His dad was like a Catholic, I think, and then mom like preached to the devil. I think that like messed with the marriage, and then he was like severely abused by his dad, and then he was put on trial for 2 different murders, and the first one he was found guilty, and then the second he was found not guilty by insanity, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He went, so like he would go to the graveyard, like he would be like not conscious during these episodes, and just like dig up bodies and then bring them back to his house, and like facilities and outfits and masks and all that stuff.
And furniture.
He does not remember details of most of that's because he did not be conscious during the episodes.
So what got the police on him was that like a shop owner, Bernie Swarden, went missing, and she was seen last with him, and then they found her in the house, decapitated and hung by her ankles. Like he said, he'd go to the gravesites in a daze, and he would remember. He said quoted to the police, he wanted to become his mother and crawl into her skin. He was trying to make a skin suit. Convicted of murder, admitted to him. Police had found as many as 40 bodies that he had claimed he'd stolen from the grave. And he furnished his house with human skin and other body parts. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? What about the trial? Did anyone look at it?
They pretty much just said the first trial he was found guilty because his case first saying he was not as strong as the second. And then he was found not guilty for his second. Because of schizophrenia, not being conscious during when they're there.
Okay. And Ed Gein, surprisingly too, several of these people are from Wisconsin, which I always think is interesting. My parents live in Wisconsin. My family's from back there. So I'm like, oh, it's not a good place to be, apparently. But Ed Gein inspired quite a few very famous movies, right? Like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the like Hannibal, like not Hannibal, the other one. Oh my gosh, I just forgot it. Buffalo Bill, right? That one. So he inspired quite a few very famous like movies from some of his behaviors that he committed. Really frightening, right? Trying to make a skin suit to assume the role of his mother. I mean, that's wild, right? It's definitely memorable. Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly from the numbers, I'm not sure how accurate this really is, obviously what happened, but I think they also tried to use like whatever approach they used for Ed Gein with Dahmer to get him off on insanity for whatever reason.
Okay.
Because of the body, something about that, they tried to connect that.
Yeah, there was some connection there, right? I haven't watched the documentary as we were talking about, but yeah, there's some commonalities, right? When it works for one, you're gonna other lawyers tend to try and use a similar approach. So that doesn't surprise me at all. All right, great. Let's clap for all of that. Thank you. All right, we have a few more. Anyone want to go next? Yeah, great. Go for it. On James Holmes, okay? So I don't mean to interrupt you, Keith, a little louder, that fan is like really loud. I'm not hearing you. Thank you, sorry. Mhm.
In July 2020, 7 people were actually moved 12 people. Like in prison. Lawyers defended him on saying he had mental problems. Poor social skills. Black shoulders. Yeah, he was mentally ill. But legally sane. The psychiatrist something confirmed. And the verdict was 13. Sweden was, Colorado. So he was 23 years old. Help people. Helpful.
But did you say what his verdicts and things were?
He was not guilty, but he had was provided, he was legally sane.
Okay.
Not guilty,
I have it right here. It says he was obsessed with killing people, and one of the jurors said the issue with mental illness was the whole thing in the trial.
Mhm.
So they had a lot of issues, like they brought up that he had depression and mental illness, but it still was like he committed this horrible acts. It was like, what side are you on? And then they went to his apartment after they reprehended him, and they found out it was booby trapped and there were bombs all over. And like, if anyone went in there the wrong way, like the whole apartment building would blow up. 3 of the jurors wanted to give him the death penalty, but because of his insane plea, he ended up getting life without parole instead of without parole.
So I heard his background.
Sure.
Said that he didn't start out as one that's like a psycho killer. He was actually really happy as a child. He was like this happy little boy in a big giant family. Except later on, he actually he was like kind of a prodigy, so he spent time like writing code, trying to build a website for school. He was really smart.
Mhm.
But later in his teens, he started becoming obsessed with killing people, and seemed to be very mentally ill. So he was studying neuroscience, in order to like, fix his own broken brain. That's what he lived himself as. And he even contemplated suicide with the things from what he felt like a little capital for him, which avoided him for every life he took. So he basically created this system. And like there is he was like diagnosed later on with schizophrenia disorder. So schizophrenia and mood disorder is like so affecting how he decided to figure out.
Yeah, they're really I always have such a like interesting like feeling around that, just because again I was there for like 4 days before that happened, but really I mean it's scary. He dressed up as the Joker and went in and like killed quite a few people, but it was so premeditated, right, that played a role in some of the verdicts, right? The fact that he was sane enough to like plan this out, and the bombs and like all of those things, really really wild. Again, one of the more like recent cases. Some of these are a little bit older, but he's definitely one that's pretty contemporary. So, all right, great, thank you. Let's clap for them as well. Right. Couple more. Who wants to go? Next? You want to go next? Yeah, great, go for it.
Gypsys Mom tweeting that when child advice box and so Gypsy's still alive, told her that she had leukemia, asthma, paralyzed seizures. And so Gypsy's in a wheelchair, pushing her, she could walk to the light, and mom said it was like a scam to make sharing and so. And Nicholas and Gypsy met Nicholas on a Christian dating website, and when they went to the movie Cinderella together, and it's like for them each other. And they started talking and started planning the murder. It was Gypsy's mom's murder, because Gypsy convinced Nicholas that her mom wasn't allowed to be together and had to be with her mom. Gypsy was found guilty of second-degree murder, only sentenced to about 10 years in prison, because for lawyers and witness during which she lived in the police before, like, because she didn't actually do the stabbing, like she wasn't guilty, but she bought the weapon, or she stole it. Like, was the one planning the whole thing, so I still know her because she actually did play a role in it. And then Nicholas was diagnosed with autism, but during the trial, they had the defense had a clinician come in, and yes, it's the state by the one from the defense argued that he was like autistic. That they didn't have a perception of reality, and then the state said no, he wasn't having disorders, he's fine. But Nicholas, when he was giving his statement to the police for the very first time, he admitted that he stabbed Katie, and said that he had two sides. He had the people side, wants Victor, and says he's like, I can kill a man here. So that was his statement. It wasn't me. So I'm just like,
Moving it on Victor.
and oddly, I don't think the defense didn't really bring that up at the trial. It was like they argued that he killed Diddy to save Gypsy.
So Nicholas's defense was that she could be Gypsy and that he had autism. He also showed that he had the mental capacity to make his own decisions, but the defense claimed that Nick was compliant and easy to manipulate. And then he was convicted of first degree, plus 25 for armed criminal.
But his defense tried to get him off and say like second degree, but she like this thing do it wasn't there. And then I think recently, April of this year, he's trying to like, say his attorneys didn't bring his family forward and testified here to autism.
And something you see so often in these cases, like a trial and another trial and an appeal, and like multiple people up here had several trials, right? These verdicts kind of get challenged over time. And Gypsy was a great example of that, guilty but with diminished capacity, right? Rather than first degree murder, it was second degree murder, which is much more common than the not guilty by reason of insanity plea. And there was a great documentary about them not that long ago. But again, so many documentaries about these folks recently. Anything else you want to add before we? All right, thank you. And then I still have Lorena Bobbitt and and Dahmer. Great. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, so why don't we do the other group and then I'll have you come up and we'll do that last so we can get it up here. Do I have one more, right? Okay, go for it.
We chose Lorena Bobbitt. She was born in Ecuador, 1970. No. In Venezuela, and there she got students here in 1987. And she was a manicurist in Miami. She met her husband, John Wayne Bobbitt, at a court ball. And after a few years of abuse and drinking and I think they've been arrested with these things. Crying
June 23rd, 1993, she claimed that her husband raped her. She said she had blacked out. She was blacked out, she cut off this, with a fish at night. After his supposedly raped her. So, when she left, but she didn't realize she still had it in her hand. And she was in the car driving, she called 911 of herself. She didn't have the authorities okay. Sure. At one point, she realized that she still had his temper. She threw it out the window into a field. There's a lot of witnesses also that had think that she did have bruises often. She had said to someone that she had to show fight her husband. He even bragged to her about this.
When we go to the sentencing, and Lorena was acquitted because, well, due to malicious wounding, and they also claimed that she was not guilty due to temporary insanity. She had spent 45 days at Central State Hospital in Virginia. And her husband was also acquitted. They found him not guilty of rape because at the time, and like this case actually in the 93 really built the term marital rape because it really wasn't recognized. And so yeah, even when he was acquitted, we still think of that. Anyways, though, he did get his fetus back on, and now he was on.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is very interesting. On the other hand, Lorena, she's been married for about 2 years now. She had a kid. She founded a foundation for victims of domestic abuse as well as volunteering shelters for that. So, yeah, I think that her sentencing was pretty accurate. It's just people that understand.
Yeah, from English just one. And yeah, John became an adult star, became famous for this Franken penis. Oh, and John Wayne Uncut are the names of the two films that started. Just random. Yeah.
I mentioned this last week.
Yeah.
During the lecture, the group also mentioned it. How is that possible? What's not?
Let's bring up a picture.
It's like here.
Yeah.
Primary attachment. That's not.
It actually can, right? So there's a very sensitive, like there's a small window, right? For when you can surgically reattach something and still have functioning. And so like if somebody has a finger removed, for example, typically they put that on ice as fast as possible, rush them to a hospital, they can surgically reattach it.
And it just.
So sometimes depending on the severity and the cleanness of the cut, or like severing, depending on what it is, they might regain full nerve control and full functioning, and other times it's partial and sometimes it's completely unsuccessful. So they, luckily for him, found his penis in the forest very quickly and put it on ice. He went to the hospital and surgically reattached it, and he was still able to get an erection and have that full functioning. He's lucky because the length of time that that the two were separated was decent, right? And so it could have very easily been that he never regained any of that, but he did. Right? Had a good surgical team. Yeah, right. That divulged the location of his penis in the forest, right? And she literally threw it out the window. But they were able to find it quite quickly. So lucky for him.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, and then if you want to come up here, we can get you set with that. So just hold tight for just a minute. We'll get them ready. So it's not gonna let me connect to that. Do you want to email it to me really quickly?
Or can I share it to you? That work? If I share a Google slide to you.
Yeah. It might be faster just to email it
Okay,
to
I'll
my,
check.
that I can open it.